Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the 9th season and final lecture of our season of Project 180's Strong Voices, Strong Subjects lecture series, produced in partnership with our friends, the Boxer Diversity Initiative. Please go ahead and continue eating throughout the program today until you're finished. Don't worry about eating while I'm talking. So I am Barbara Richards. I'm the president, CEO, and founder of Project 180. And thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm so glad you're all here. And for anyone who's new to Project 180, we want to especially welcome you. We'll tell you about our programs, that sort of thing, in just a few minutes. But first, I will have to say, none of this, Project 180, would not be in existence without the individuals and the foundations that support not only this lecture series, but also our programs. We are very grateful for you. In the interest of time, I'm only going to mention our major sponsors, but I hope that you'll review in your program the full list of our sponsors, because everyone is appreciated and important to our cause. Our major sponsors are Koski Family Foundation, now in their 7th year of sponsoring this series. Palm Avenue Wealth Advisory Group at Raymond James, Beneva Flowers and Plantscapes, Verizon, the Boxer Diversity Initiative, again, our partners in this series, Wendy and Jim Cox, and the Gourmead family. Our sponsors' generosity is a testament to compassionate people who seek to solve some of our community's most pressing social problems by donating to and supporting Project 180. And we are very grateful to you. Thank you so much. So I'd like to ask our board of directors, staff, residents, and volunteers to please stand. Thank you for your creativity and your perseverance in pursuit of Project 180's mission and vision. Now, board member David Schul and his partner Leah. Is Leah here today, David? Okay, wave your hand so everybody knows who you are. David is a board member and also the owner of Beneva Flowers and Plantscapes, and he provided today's centerpieces. You can take one home today in response. But please, if you're taking one, please leave a very generous donation in the little pink or orange envelope on your table. Now, Project 180 is a prisoner reentry program. It's a nonprofit that helps incarcerated men and women before and after release to prepare for life. Our programs are listed in your program if you'd like to follow along. Our CEO workforce education class was conceived and developed by Project 180 and has served over 1,200 incarcerated citizens. We take employers and hiring managers behind bars to help people find, apply for, interview for, and retain a position in that CEO's industry. It's very informative. In our current job market, many employers go inside to recruit. So we figured that once someone is making money at a job, they need to know how to manage it wisely. So we started a financial literacy course, which we teach almost weekly at the Sarasota County Jail. If you're interested in being an instructor in either of these courses, the workforce education or financial literacy course, we'll let you know later on how you can volunteer. We also have a couple of outstanding programs for individuals once they're released. First Week Out is our newest program, and it is groundbreaking. It is funded in part by Community Foundation of Sarasota County's Equity and Access Grant, by Koski Family Foundation, and an anonymous donor. In this program, we take a highly proactive approach to prisoner reentry, and this particular program is only for men and women returning to Sarasota County from state prison. It has the highest diversity rate of all of our programs, and currently we serve about 20 individuals a month, and that is growing. Our help in this program begins while people are still inside. We partner with probation to find out who's coming back to Sarasota from state prison, and then months before the person's return, we send them a survey asking what they will need when they return and find out what that is, and then we set everything up prior to their release. We pick up our new client either at the prison or, if the prison's too far away, at the bus stop, and immediately take them to the jail to register, which is mandatory, and purchase clothing, shoes, a phone, hygiene products, other basics, and we will have prearranged a healthcare exam if the person indicates that they need that. We prearrange program housing, so the client's first night is spent in a bed instead of in the woods or wandering the street. St. Vincent de Paul, Incarnation Conference, and GRASP usually will fund the first 2 weeks of that person's housing because people come back and they don't immediately have a job. And then Project 180 sticks by, providing case management for weeks or months and acting as an advocate for that individual. We help 100% of the individuals who return our survey, and as of this year, half of our clients are working, paying their bills, and staying out of trouble. First week out really does make a difference. Last, our outstanding residential program is funded by Charles and Marjorie Brancic Foundation. This is the family foundation that granted us the funds to purchase our first home and thereby stabilized that program in perpetuity. Gulf Coast Community Foundation, again, Koski Family Foundation, and hundreds of donors, many of whom are sitting here right now in this room. So we're very grateful to you. In this program, we serve formerly incarcerated men who are in active recovery and are from Sarasota County. We have 2 homes that house a total of 11 men, and newsflash, everybody, very important, we're looking for a 3rd home. Our homes are nice. They're the kind you'd want your son or your brother or your nephew to live in. Residents can stay up to 2 years in our comprehensive, supportive family environment. It helps a man stabilize, learn to live a productive life, form some dreams, let go of his past, and embrace his future. So with your help, we're turning lives around. Now, before we begin the panel discussion, I want to let you know that everybody has a little index card in their materials, and if you have a question during Q&A, write it down, hold it up, and one of our staff members will pick it up during the Q&A, during the panel discussion. Now, the reason that we've asked you here today is very important. We've asked you here to help save lives. The disease of addiction, compulsive, chronic, and recurring, fills our prisons and jails. And our addicted friends and loved ones not only need help when they get out, but they also need help while they're in the justice system. Every day, whether someone is incarcerated or on the outside, a person with the disease has to guard against its compulsive effects. Willpower does not cure it. And once someone has it, they have it for life. It is ever present. What helps is the company, support, and guidance of others who have the disease, especially those who have many years in recovery. Yet, too often when one is caught in the justice system, the environment of recovery is absent or only available to a small percent of inmates, despite the fact that 75 to 90% of men and women in jails and prisons suffer from the disease. Having said that, we are not here to blame or diminish the efforts of what any agency is doing, but we're here to encourage solutions to the problem of too little attention to the disease from the moment one is arrested to release. Serving 2 to 5% of incarcerated citizens is noble but insufficient. Our panelists are going to share how they can encourage and lead systemic change in the criminal justice system to better serve those with the disease of addiction. Here to introduce our moderator is Project 180 board member and Breaker of Chain sponsor, Joe Malave from Palm Avenue Wealth Advisory Group at Raymond James. Please welcome Joe.
Hello, I'm Joe Malave. I'm a businessman here in town. I'm a pretty straight-laced kind of guy. I've never gotten in trouble with the law. I've never been incarcerated. However, it doesn't take personal experience to see that there's something wrong when so many people we incarcerate suffer from the same disease. I've met many of the men who have come through Project 180's residential program and many other besides who have been in our financial literacy courses at the jail. I volunteered as a financial literacy instructor, as a director of the board, and a treasurer of Project 180. I've devoted a lot of time and energy to this organization because I believe what Project 180 does for individuals that I see in the program coming through, that we welcome in the literacy courses. I see what it does for their families, I hear their stories and what it's done for their families, and what it does for all of us as a community. The men in our program are great guys. They remind me of my cousin Elvin. When I was about 10 years old, my cousin Elvin was incarcerated. He had addiction problems, and that led to his incarceration. And my father told me and my brother, whenever Elvin calls from jail, you answer the phone. You listen to what he has to say, and you talk to him. And so we did. And our conversations, as you know, he's my cousin, we just talked about school. He asked me how the sports were and what was going on in my life. But he ended every conversation with, Joe, don't do what I did. Don't end up what I did. Keep your nose clean and keep the same path going forward. When he got out of jail, he came to our house because he had burned a lot of bridges with what he did previously. My father had very strict rules for him. But after a period of time, he went out on his own, and I'm happy to say that he has fulfilled his dream. And I called my mother this morning, and I said, Mom, how's Elvin doing? Have you heard from Elvin? What's going on with him? She goes, oh, he's living in New Canaan with his wife. He's happy with his kids, and he's fulfilled his dreams. Same as the men in our program, we want to help them do a 180. We want to help them turn their lives around and help them fulfill their dreams. And their dreams might be getting their 40 or 50-year key tag at an AA or an NA meeting, living a normal life, settling down, having a family, building a career. I want to help them accomplish all those things. It's better for them, it's better for their families, and certainly better for our community. I would also like to help Project 180, help them, and for our esteemed panelists to help them too. Our residents are good men who deserve a second chance at a better life. Please remember them after our panel discussion today when Bob takes the stage and asks you for your financial contribution. Remember these men and remember their dreams. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce John Thaxton, Senior Vice President for Community Leadership at Gulf Coast Community Foundation. John creates and implements Gulf Coast key strategies for transforming our region's nonprofit community and provides leadership on emerging issues. John joined Gulf Coast in 2012 as Director of Community Investment while completing his 12th year of service on the Sarasota County Commission. He was promoted to Senior Vice President in 2015. In his role, John works with nonprofit organizations, donors, and other community partners to invest Gulf Coast resources in initiatives that will transform our region and improve public policies. He has been instrumental in Gulf Coast Community Foundation's funding for Project 180's residential program and has been over for dinner to meet our guys with his wife, Drew, and his best buddy, Rocky the dog. Please welcome John Thaxton.
I asked Barbara if I could bring Rocky. She said yes, but Michael said no. So Rocky is at home. So since Joe kind of started this off with his background, part of the resume that I usually don't include for introductions is the reality that I have been arrested 3 times for various nefarious acts, mostly when I was a very young man, but they still exist. And so I only say that to this group. First off, I'm retiring in a couple years, so I'm not worried about getting hired ever again in my life. But secondly, because I believe in second chances. I believe in third chances. I believe in fourth chances, because it just doesn't always happen on the first or second try. Sometimes, even people like me, it takes numerous tries. So I'm not sure that I could meet the standard that Joe described as living a normal life. I would describe my life as anything but normal, but I am remarkably fortunate and blessed, and that was only because there was individuals that gave me a second chance, and a third and a fourth. So today, I'd like to first off start off by inviting my panelists up, Greg, Ed, and Kurt. If you could start making your way to the stage. Kind of the goal of today's meeting is we want to empower a panel of state and local leaders to discuss how we can encourage and lead positive systemic change in the criminal justice system by taking into account the reoccurring nature of addiction and also look at innovative approaches to recovery. And we want to do this from a community approach, encouraging the community and all of its leaders, not just the leaders that you see up here. These gentlemen have specific duties and obligations, but it's going to take the leadership of the entire community in order to envision how we can all think big, think large for this vision of systemic change. So I'm going to start with a very brief introduction of these gentlemen. I always like to say when I don't like long introductions myself, so John, thank you for cutting mine short. If you want to find out what their favorite ice cream is or their favorite sports team, just go to the internet and look it up. And I actually tried that with these 3 guys. And what I discovered different about them from other panelists that I work with is they ain't got much on the internet. All right? And then it dawned on me, well, of course, they're all law enforcement officials, so they're not going to be posting every day and every weekend what they're doing on Facebook. So anyways, you can check it out yourself. I'm going to start with Greg Franzese. Did I get it? Did I hit it?
Nailed it.
He is a correctional program administrator at Florida Department of Corrections with over 15 years of experience in the correctional field. He holds a master's in social work from Florida State University, is credentialed as a certified criminal justice addiction professional. And Greg has been involved with numerous special projects, including the development and the implementation of the Short Sentence Correctional Institution and peer-to-peer community mission. Please welcome Greg Franzese. And Greg did not have very much warning for his position here as a panelist, so we appreciate you coming on short notice to Sarasota. Ed Brodsky, career-long prosecutor, having served with the State Attorney's Office for 29 years. He became the State Attorney in January 2013 and is currently in his 3rd term. He serves as the State Advisory Group on Juvenile Justice and Delinquency, and his appointment by then-Governor Rick Scott. Ed is the president of the Florida Prosecuting Attorneys Association and an adjunct professor at USF Sarasota Manatee. He obtained his undergraduate degree in criminology from USF and his law degree from Nova University Law School in Fort Lauderdale. Ed and his wife, Kim, have 2 children and live here in Sarasota. Please welcome State Attorney Ed Brodsky. Sheriff Kurt Hoffman is the 11th Sheriff of Sarasota County. I think I've known 6 of them, including Jimmy Hardcastle, who was around when I had most of my issues and things. Now I threw myself off. John, why'd you do that? All right. Serving since 2021, he began his law enforcement career as a deputy with the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office in 1989. Sheriff Hoffman serves the community for more than 3 decades as a prosecutor for the 12th Judicial Circuit and as general counsel for the Sheriff's Office in 2005. During his tenure at the Sheriff's Office, Kurt has served as captain, major, and colonel. He has a rich history of service in local and state law enforcement and the United States military, and he is passionate about the veteran community and his family and his hometown. He also lives in Sarasota with his wife, Terry. He lives in Sarasota County, but resides in the city of Venice with his wife, Terry. Please welcome Sheriff Kurt Hoffman. And if y'all don't mind, can we do first name?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Please.
because it gets awkward saying
Sure, John.
Mr. State Attorney and all this other stuff. Thank you.
Let's do that.
Yeah, you can call me John. So most of us in this room, you know, I was thinking about, should I ask for a show of hands about those that have had any impact with someone or yourselves with mental health? And then I thought, that's like a redundant question, right? Because virtually everyone in this room has had a direct or indirect of someone who has been afflicted, affected, or affected by mental health. And our approach to mental health has changed over the years, and one of the deciding factors on how we actually work in mental health is how we define it. So my first question to the panelists is, how would you define the disease of addiction? And I'm going to go in reverse order from where you were introduced, and I'll try to mix it up as we go. So Kurt, can you give us your definition of the disease of addiction?
Well, I would define it as, you know, life-altering, devastating contact with, you know, substances and things that are detrimental and change the path of one's life. And I would add that, and particularly from a law enforcement perspective, you know, we're late to the game in terms of understanding the impact that this has on the criminal justice system and the cycle of addiction, and how many times it takes. John mentioned, you know, 2 or 3 times, 4th time, 5th time. I know a person that went through rehab 26 times, now sober, has a business, has 10 employees. So I define it as quite a conundrum for law enforcement that we're finally late to the game, but we're here and we realize that we are partners in helping to solve this.
Thank you. Excellent. Ed?
So I look at it as something that you can't control, and there's a lot of things that when we talk about the disease of addiction that we're all addicted to, right? It can be sports. I think about every morning when I wake up, I have to have coffee. My wife has to have coffee. So there's various forms of addiction, but as we speak in terms of criminal justice or criminology or in law enforcement, you know, we look for those indicators when a case comes across our desk, our prosecutors, and you know, I'm fortunate that we have a team of our prosecutors here. We've got law enforcement here. The legal profession is here from both the judiciary and the defense bar. And I think it's important for us all to come together to recognize the disease of addiction and what it is that we can do to recognize it and what we can do to treat it and make a difference, right? That's why all of you are here and we have this outstanding presence. But for us, we're looking for those folks that have allowed some substance to take over control of their life and has caused them to make some very poor decisions that have led them to enter the criminal justice system. And what can we do to make a change in that?
Thank you, Ed. We had also asked some of those that are struggling with this disease of mental illness the same question, how they would define it. And Ed, your definition reminds me of one of them, and this person's definition was that once this addiction begins, there is this desire to avoid being separated from this preferred substance. And the reason is because this person could not stop on their own. They needed help, which is exactly what you were describing, because of this mental obsession that for this individual at least, that substance abuse has now compounded itself into a physical compulsion as well as a mental one. So, Greg, I'm going to move to you. The same question is your definition of the disease of mental illness.
Yeah, so I think, as my fellow panelists said, lack of control, and where we come into it, in my role and my fellow panelists is, the negative consequences. Despite the negative consequences, they just simply cannot control it, despite several efforts to do so. And a lot of times it's that whole, I think you said, conundrum of, you have those conversations of why on earth would they do that? Why would you? I think it's this misconception of a choice, right? Like you said, Barbara, willpower, and that's I think where this definition lies. Is it's really marked by a lack of choice. Over time, it becomes a lack of choice, and there's an inability, an increasing inability over time to be able to control it, to lessen it, despite negative consequences, despite people coming in and out of the revolving door of jails and prisons.
So another definition from one of our persons afflicted by the illness directly, and this one, Greg, certainly is reminiscent of what you were saying. And this one is that they use the term drinks and drugs. I always associate alcohol, as a drug. I think it is a legitimate drug. So I would reword it to say drinks and other drugs give a sense of ease to the alcoholic or the addict. And here's, I think, the really telling part of this person's definition. This sense of ease helps me avoid the internal restlessness, irritability, and discontent that they typically feel. So it's kind of like an escape mechanism, right? This is a place where they can go, and they feel safe, they feel comfortable, and kind of remove themselves from the reality that's troubling them. So the second question I would like to ask of the panelists is, within your own agency, list what you have already accomplished to benefit and assist those suffering from this disease. And Ed, if we could, I'll start with you this time.
Sure. So I was blessed to take office in 2013. So I've been with the state attorney's office for 30 years now, and the last 9 years as the elected state attorney. And I can tell you what criminal justice and what our office looked like back then is much different, I think, than what it looks like today. And because we really do understand the value of treatment and making a difference to change lives. You could do the same process, right? Simply incarcerate folks and just simply move people through the criminal justice system. And you're not changing the result. You're getting these folks to keep coming back through the doors of the criminal justice system. But unless you do something to impact their lives and make a difference to help them, you're not going to change the results. So one of the things that we first did when I took office 9 years ago, we had a drug court program, but we began to robustly expand our drug court program. As Barbara said, 75, 80% of the folks that come through the doors of the criminal justice system that are incarcerated are suffering from addiction. And if you don't do something to treat that, they may go through the criminal justice system, they may be convicted, but if you're not doing anything to treat the underlying disease, they're going to come back. We also formed a program when I first started. We partnered with the Sarasota Police Department. We saw that there was a human trafficking problem. We saw that there was street-level prostitution. One of the things that we saw up and down Tamiami Trail was street-level prostitution, and the neighbors were complaining about it. And we wanted to tackle that problem. And those women that are out on the street, and as someone pointed out to me, my chief assistant said to me yesterday, how many women wake up in the morning and say, I can't wait to go have sexual relations with 20 random people today, right? And those are women that are struggling on the streets and are having to cope with survival skills, and they become addicted. They have mental illness issues. So we began a program, and we have a Tyler Court program to tackle those issues. That was the first in the state of Florida. In 2015, following much of what Sheriff Hoffman has done, I mean, our support and our recognition for those that put their life on the line for us, is that we owe a debt of gratitude to those that are out there risking their life to defend our nation. And we felt here in our community, we weren't doing enough to honor and to serve our veterans, right? They put their life on the line for us. We owe them a debt of gratitude for that. So we created a Veterans Court program to connect them to the vital services. We started in 2016 a community treatment court to address the homeless population, right? That's something that's been a problem here in our community, and also to address mental illness. We started in 2019, we started a community care court program to further address some of the housing issues and other issues for the homeless population. And something that we started last year with the assistance of the courts, the sheriff's office, we saw that we needed to manage our jail population. That's something that right now is currently a very large topic of discussion, is managing our jail population. And with the growth of Sarasota County, expected to be over 100,000 individuals over the next decade, we need to have a real conversation about what our jail is going to look like and how are we going to manage that population. So last year, in order to be more productive and to better serve those that are coming through the doors of the criminal justice system, we began a program called CORT, C-O-R-T, to help those with co-occurring disorders. And so those are just some of the things that we've done just over the last few years.
Thank you, Ed. So move now to you, Kurt. What are some of the accomplishments in your agencies to benefit and assist those with the mental health
Sure.
illness?
So before I even get into some of the things that we've done internally within the agency, there had to be a cultural shift in law enforcement, right? John mentioned that I started in 1989, and I always tell this story, and Ed can relate. Ed was a law enforcement officer many, many years ago. It was kind of cops and robbers, right? It was a game of we catch you, you go to jail, we catch you, you go to jail. And when you're a lot younger, you think that is what you got into the profession for. And then flash forward 25, 30 years later, you get into an executive role in a law enforcement agency, and you have the ability to really see from the 30,000-foot level that kind of policing is not only in our rearview mirror, but it's not really helping the issues of mental illness and addiction. And when you're a young cop on the street in your 20s and you're thinking, why is this the 5th time I've arrested this person for DUI? Why is this person, always being Baker acted? You're not in a position at that time to make change, right? So there's been a sea change in law enforcement, but in Sarasota County in particular, for those of you that don't know, and I know many of you do, we have the first addiction recovery pod in the state of Florida.
Kurt, if I can interrupt you, I would characterize that as a major accomplishment, what you just said.
Yeah. Well, even before that, I think you should recognize, the folks that make that happen and make that sea change and turn the ship around. All my folks back here at the table with me that work day in and day out to try to help these individuals. But that addiction recovery pod, and I'll never forget Sheriff Knight and I talking about this. We got grief from other chiefs of police and from sheriffs. What are you doing? And we said, well, we're tired of doing the same thing and not being able to help people and not being able to solve problems. And not being able to address recidivism. So that addiction recovery pod was our first kind of shot across the bow to change things. From there, Ed mentioned the veteran population. I have a very rich history of veterans in my family. We have a vets pod in the jail attached, primarily with our reentry pod, which helps folks when they are going to get ready to go back out into society. We have a care pod, collaborative approach to reintegration through education, dealing specifically, with mental illness. We have 60-plus programs in that jail. We're running a barista program over there now. We're running a flow bus, if you're not familiar with that, Florida licensing on wheels, to have folks that can get their driver's license, get their ID card before they leave. So think of all those things that we've talked about, some of them that are barriers to success, right? Obviously, it's a mental illness. It's an addiction. It's not having a driver's license. It's not having any assistance when you get out of jail. We recently decided to add, through the help, I see Matt Sauer sitting here in the front row. I want to thank Barancic for letting us add a third navigator to our sheriff's office. What do? They help those individuals when they get out of jail bridge that gap. Because I think all of us will agree, wherever there's gaps in the system, that's where we're seeing our failure, right? So as good as we're doing with those programs, once the door to the jail opens, I'll never forget, I saw a young man standing on the sidewalk. He looked left, he looked right. I had a pair of our shoes on, had a bag. I approached him and asked him if I could help him. He says, I have nowhere to go. I have no car. I have no friends. And I thought, all the work that we've just put in, that they've put in internally within the facility, let's have something on the outside to pick up that baton and go with it. And our Navigator program is that program. I'm proud to say we're going to be adding a third position with the help of Barancic. So law enforcement has changed, John, and I think we've all recognized that there's more that we can do in this realm. And one last thing. What the men and women in our facility are doing in our jail, and I can say this because I don't think there's any patrol guys in here, is going to have a bigger impact on the quality of life in Sarasota County and turning lives around and helping people than driving up and down and patrolling and writing traffic tickets. And we're going to do all that kind of stuff. But there's been a sea change in law enforcement, and thankfully we've recognized that.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. And I do have to take this opportunity to put in a shameless plug for the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, who is also instrumental in starting the Navigator program with Sheriff Knight and our wonderful partners in the community for housing and putting all these pieces together. It's really, the numbers that we're seeing from that program are truly inspiring. It's working.
It is.
It is. So we'll move now to you, Greg. Again, we're on the topic of what your agency has accomplished so far.
Well, like Sheriff was saying, the culture, that's one, you know, Department of Corrections, we house right now around 83,000 individuals behind our fences, and it's a big ship to turn around. And so there's an old culture that, you know, I think we've gone a long way to shift within our facilities that moves away from the old mentality of, you know, throw them in prison and lock away the key, you know, and so, or throw away the key, sorry. And so now, you know, shifting that mentality into one of real rehabilitation and corrections. And so a lot of that starts at the top, and we have some leadership who I think more so than ever, at least since I've been with this department, is very much behind programs, regardless of who the audience is they're speaking to, you know, be it correctional officers or people such as yourselves in the community. That message stays the same, and that message is that we need to better the individuals that come into our facilities. And so from a treatment perspective, I'm here representing my Bureau of Substance Use Treatment, and some of the things that we've done, we've increased access to treatment, substance use treatment in prison. We have access to multiple levels of care within our facilities. So where it used to be if you were sent to a place that only had a residential therapeutic community, for example, which is our highest level of care, but you know, your level of need wasn't at that level perhaps, then guess what? You were going to a residential therapeutic community regardless of what your severity of need was. And so now we have outpatient, intensive outpatient, residential therapeutic communities within our facilities to the tune of just under 4,000 beds statewide. Is that enough? No, but it's improvement. And those are licensed. Those are licensed by the Department of Children and Families within our facilities by professionals. And so I think that's one big thing, is just making sure that we're treating the right people with the right level of care as assessed by that need. We do administer an ASAM, so when they come through reception, there's a determination of whether or not there's a need, basically, and then the treatment program, when they get to that facility, assesses what that level of need is and places them accordingly. So that's been a big accomplishment. And then we also have our community, and I have Shantae Shiflett here, who, you know, if you talk to her for about 2 minutes, you realize just how passionate she is about what she does as well. And so, you know, we have Shantae, you can eyeball me if you want. Not. But we have around 800 residential beds on the community side, and 100 post-release transitional housing beds. A little more than that, 106, I believe. And so that's one thing that we're making a concerted effort to do, is to make that handoff as well. We do all this good treatment when they're with us, and then, in the past, we've turned them out with nothing, just like the sheriff was describing, and it's kind of validating hearing it at that level as well. And so what we're trying to do with intent is to set these folks up, because these people have comprehensive needs post-release, and so that's where we're trying to go as well.
So before I ask the next question, it will be the last question that we had pre-designed for the panel. So just want to remind individuals in the audience, if they have cards. Barbara, are they to get that? How would they get the cards? Okay, so Barbara will be able to pick those up, and we will get to those next. So we've talked about our accomplishments kind of from a retrospective view. Let's now turn to prospectively what we're going to be doing in the future, and specifically, what is your vision for your agencies that will bring about this systemic change for better impacting this disease of mental illness? And kind of as a sub-question, who else do we need to be engaged? Who else in the community needs to be engaged in the future to bring about this systemic change so that these individuals can more normalize their lives? And Sheriff Hoffman, this one, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. So I'll start with a couple of things that I think are kind of on the horizon for us. And shameless plug for the penny surtax that comes up in November. But, with some of those funds, we hope to eventually be able to establish a community corrections facility attached to the east side of our jail. For those of you that don't know, our jail was built in the 70s, 90s, and 2000, roughly. You look at it from the outside, it looks like one monolithic building, but it's really three separate entities on the inside in there, and not built during a time when they were designing jails to do rehabilitative programs, vocational programs, things like that. That community corrections facility would allow us to be able to have more of a dormitory style, vocational style, job fair type stuff going on in there. And I know that's a ways away, and it's a big ask for the public, but I think it's long overdue. The second thing, there's a nationwide discussion, particularly around law enforcement, about how we approach these issues of mental illness on the street for the average man or woman that is a road cop that's going to a house at 2 o'clock in the morning. They're in crisis. If you look at the last few officer-involved shootings that we've had, all of them have had some mental health component to them, at least the last three. And the colonel and I debrief very heavily on, what can we do about these situations? And sometimes when a person has a gun or they have a knife or whatever, we have to go in there and make the area safe for professionals to, hopefully, the outcome is that a professional will be able to contact that person. So we mentioned First Step. Shawnee Roby over at First Step has been a good partner with trying to stand up a behavioral health response team in the community. The problem with that, of course, we're 24/7, 365. So at 3 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day, we're working. To have civilian resources to be able to go to these mental health calls and triage for us is still, we're just not quite there yet for a variety of reasons. For them being able to hire the right people, stand them up, make them available 24/7. And then just for this audience, as a law enforcement executive, I can't send a civilian to go knock on that door right at 2 o'clock in the morning until I know that situation is safe. So we're still working through what that model looks like. We've had a few minor successes, I would say, with the behavioral health response team that Shawnee has been able to put together right now. But I'd like to see that expanded so that once we de-escalate the situation and get that person somewhere, we can bring in those mental health professionals to follow up on law enforcement and help those people long-term.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. Before I go, Greg, to you on this question, We only have a couple minutes left for this segment before I do need to get to the audience, but I would like to put in a kudos to the Sarasota Board of County Commissioners, because along this line of mental health, Sarasota, most people in the room I'm sure don't know this, but Sarasota was the first community and one of the only communities in the entire state of Florida to actually adopt a mental health special district. So we have the infrastructure in place once a funding source is identified so that we can actually fund these programs that the panelists are talking about here in our community. And I think that sets us apart from many of the other 67 counties in the state. In fact, I think there's only 2 counties that have a mental health special district to date, and we were the first. So thank you to the Board of County Commissioners for that. So Greg, what do you see in the future in terms of the state?
I just see, I alluded to it before, but I think we need continued efforts to make that handoff to the community. And so I think a lot of the folks in here, perhaps can help with that. But I think the part of the question I think was, or a sub-question was, who do we need at the table? Mm-hmm. And I think that's people from the local communities who can really champion that handoff and what all that entails and all the different services that entails. Housing and aftercare services and mental health and et cetera. And so that's what we need. We need what we really need is investment, a real investment from community in their returning citizens, I think. And that should start, I think, pre-release. So that's where we want to move as well, is, especially within our short sentence correctional institutions. We have mentors inside the facility, but where we want to go is building that base of mentors in the community that can come in pre-release and start working with that individual before they go out, and and then they have that support when they get out as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Ed, in the future, other partners at the table?
So obviously, I think, one of the things that I hear from our prosecutors and certainly the courts, I think the frustration that they have sometimes is that there's an inadequate number of beds, right? So that goes back to funding. So beds, there's long waiting lists and waiting times for folks to get into the treatment that they need. So treatment facilities, more treatment facilities would be fantastic. But I think hitting on what the Department of Corrections is doing, to me, transitional services is very fundamental. One of the things, I got to spend an evening with Barbara Richards and went to her house and got to meet with some of the folks that she's seeing there. And it's astonishing to think that there's folks that have been incarcerated, some of them for a decade, right? 15 years. Some of them they don't know what a smartphone is. I was talking to Shane today. We were talking about doesn't have a driver's license. You don't have a bank account. You don't have a car. How are you going to get to work? How are you going to put a roof over your head? Like Barbara said, are you going to sleep in the woods tonight? Where are you going to go? So what the Department of Corrections is now recognized, and I think they're moving in that direction, and I think is critically important, is what the sheriff talked about also, is this transitional services. We've got to do more to give transitional services to those that are coming out from the jail, that are coming out of prison, to make sure, like Barbara said, that week one when you get out of the Department of Corrections, are you going to make it? You either go left or right, and who's going to be there to make sure they go to the right and go the right direction? And so there's a lot of critical infrastructure that needs to take place. What can the community do? Speaking to Shane earlier, and one of the things I think that the Sheriff's Office does, the Recovery Pod, they bring in mentors, right? Folks that have been away from the program, that have been out of the jail for a year or more, and to come in and share with those inmates the success that they've had. And Shane said that, that has really made an impact on him. And so I give kudos to the Sheriff's Office for doing that. But what can the community do? We need mentors. We need people that are going to be there to support, give a lifting hand to some of these folks and things of that nature. And I think that would make a big difference.
Thank you, Ed. Was there someone? Yeah, they were the third one that I didn't call on, that I did call on for that. So I'm going to move. Barbara, I have only a couple here, if you have any that are priority. And while you're handing those to me, I'm going to give you, gentlemen, a little bit of a softball question. What journals do you read to stay abreast of innovative practices in treating the disease of mental health. So Greg, I'm just randomly going to start with you.
Oh, boy. You said a softball question, right?
Well, it is. It just gives me time to read the ones that are coming up. And for those of you that wrote some of these, you'll have to excuse me if I get them incorrectly, as I excuse you for your penmanship. Great.
I honestly, I fall back on a lot of the literature, and, you know, for example, we do a lot of the training that I do, the community approach training, the peer-to-peer training, which is one thing I didn't really get to talk about, which is based on the therapeutic community model. And so a lot of the reading I do has to do with that, with the therapeutic community approach. And so we use that as a backdrop, as a framework for the training that we do with our staff, as well as our inmate volunteers within those peer-to-peer communities. And that's gone a long way toward that cultural shift that I was talking about with the community approach. That's been a catalyst for it. So that peer-to-peer model, we now have set up in 40 of our facilities, and just like it sounds, it's a group of peers who want to be there, who want to be in an environment to grow and to change. And so we use that community model that we've pulled some of the clinical aspects out of it to make it more general, and it's a recovery-oriented model that we've used, and that's been a catalyst for shifting that culture.
Thank you. As I said, I was using that kind of as a bridge to get to the audience questions, and the audience questions are much better than the one I just asked. So I'm going to stop this line of questioning right now and ask one of the audience questions. So there are organizations and businesses that profit from incarceration. Minnesota does not have a prison, but other regions in Florida do. How do we counter the financial incentives of mass incarceration? And who would like to address this one first?
I'll take a shot at it.
Sure.
Because, you know, some of the contracts that we have in the jail are multi-million-dollar contracts. So I think whoever asked that question is spot on in terms of, you know, there is an economic impact to all of this. I'll just tell you from a real simple perspective how I look at it at the sheriff's office. As the elected sheriff, I don't have a lot of bureaucracy in terms of what we're going to bring into our facility, what we're going to attach our name to. Barbara's program is one of a few that you'll see around town that has a sheriff's star on it. So I think it's incumbent upon the leaders, and I know Ed and I talk frequently about this. What are the programs out there that have got a track record of success? Project 180, and I could name a whole variety of other ones. But I think the answer to that question, John, is the leadership has to be able to vet those organizations appropriately, make sure that they have a track record. Now, there's been some that I've turned down, particularly up in Manatee County, and then a year or two later, they come back and cycle back around and say, here's the people's lives we've touched. I reach out, talk to some of those people. I just want to see a track record of success and not a motivation based on finance, a motivation based on helping people turn their life around. And I've been doing this for a long time. I'm a pretty good judge of character, don't always make the right decisions, but I think vetting those on the front end will lead to success for the individuals on the back end.
Thank you. Others? Go for it, Greg.
I would say also, and this is where I come in, and also my counterpart here, Shantae, on the community side. I think it also comes down to doing some good quality assurance monitoring. You know, so there is a financial aspect to this, but we're, you know, on the service provider side of it, most of our substance use treatment programs are contracted programs, and so that's where we come in to go in and make sure that we're getting the services that we're paying for, essentially. So going in and doing, sitting in those groups and talking to the clients and talking to the staff and making sure that we're doing real treatment and we're not just seeing dollar signs in the seats.
Ed, did you want to touch on? Okay.
I mean, I agree with everything they both said. I agree with everything the sheriff said. I think it really does fall back to measurables. I mean, it's going to be results oriented. and you're looking for the results to be achieved, and otherwise you move on to another provider. So I would agree. The other thing I should have said earlier is we need more of Barbara Richards around the state.
So Sheriff, this one is actually probably mostly in your camp. I have 3 cards here that are very similar in nature, and they deal with the NA and the AA meetings that are conducted in the jail facility. So this particular one of the 3 questions that I see here is specific to the volunteers. So maybe generally, what can you say about the access to NA and AA meetings in the jail for those incarcerated and for those volunteers on the outside that are looking to get, to offer some help?
Certainly. So that we have a long-standing history of having both of those programs in there. And Major Meinberg's in the back. He can correct me if I'm wrong. We're probably near 400 volunteers, roughly, coming in and out of the jail. I get asked that question a lot when we do a Citizens Law Enforcement Academy. They say, we want to volunteer. And we have the, it's fortunate distinction of having a lot of volunteers that want to work for us. So you would contact the jail and see if you can offer your services in that way. But I have to go back to the design of the jail makes it difficult for vocational programs. For those of you that know, particularly like the West Wing, very traditional bar, cell block type, as opposed to the pods where we do some of the work now. So anything that we're doing well now and we would like to expand is probably only limited by the space. And as I mentioned, or if I didn't mention, we're at 1,004 inmates today. Our operational capacity is 836. When you're 200 over, you have COVID, you have a medical wing to run, you keep gang members away from gang members, male away from female, juveniles away from adults. As you can imagine, that footprint that you have to be able to do positive change in the jail really shrinks to a very small area. So with the community corrections facility that I mentioned, all of those, NA, AA, and a whole host of other programs could expand, and that's our hope.
Okay, thank you. And you gave this invitation, so I'm going to take the privilege of the moderator here to actually give a shout out to Major Brian Meinberg. I have had the opportunity to meet with him and work with him, and if you have a stereotype about what a warden, if you would, or a jail manager is,
He's the warden.
He's going to blow it out of the water. Because he is one caring professional, and Sarasota County is deeply privileged to have you running our local jail. So, Major Meinberg, thank you for that. So, how much of the crime in Sarasota is attributed to addiction? And is it true that Sarasota County is number 2 in crime for similar cities our size in the United States?
Talking about city crime or county crime?
Well, this is one of the beauties and the curses of having a city and a county with the same name.
Yes.
I guess that you could answer it from whatever perspective that you want. So maybe let's kind of generalize the question. And do we have an idea about how much of the crime in Sarasota can be attributed to the illness of mental health? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I mean, certainly, I think from our experience, you know, and the folks that are here from my office, our experience is that there is a significantly large number of crimes that are being committed that are either from substance abuse or mental illness or a combination of the two. And so every single case that we touch almost has to have some form of analysis on our part to decide what type of substance abuse treatment do we need to bring in here, what type of mental health counseling do we need to bring in here. But I'd say, you know, it's a very large number of the cases. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at that. We're using a different methodology to track our crime now. It's called NIBRS. I won't bore you with what it stands for, but before it was the UCR code. So we looked at what we called Part 1 crimes, the violent crimes, rape, robbery, murder, arson, those kind of things. And they're actually down significantly over about a 12-year period for us, over 50%. So I think we've done a really good job on the crime. And let's face it, what part of that is, identifying the people who need to be in jail, right? You've got folks with mental illness and with substance abuse that may have committed a crime, but is that the long-term population of our jail or of corrections? We should be trying to help those individuals. So on the violent crime side, John, I would say it is down. But I agree with Ed, almost everything from a basic misdemeanor on up has some mental health or addiction component to it. It's a significant amount. I don't know that it is attributable to necessarily the violent crime, but it is taxing the resources of the criminal justice system. Somebody asked me the other day, you know, what's it like being sheriff? I said, well, it's homelessness, it's mental health issues, it's addiction, and it's affordable housing. It's not even crime issues anymore. These are social issues that we're trying to deal with and make this shift. So I agree with Ed. Almost everybody you're coming in contact with, and I assume everybody in this room has a friend, family member, neighbor who is struggling with that as well.
Yeah, great response. Greg, did you have something you wanted to add to it in terms of the percentage of crime that you're seeing at the state level that have some attribute contributed by mental illness?
I know, and this is a conservative figure based on what's documented, but about 60% of the people that come into our facility have a documented substance use need, and I say conservative because we all know it's probably closer, much closer to the number that Barbara, I think, mentioned earlier, 80 to 85%, if not higher. You know, when I did mental health evaluations back when, that was the vast majority of people coming in that I was seeing was mental illness or substance use, and in most cases it was a lot of trauma tied to that as well.
Thank you. So Barbara's giving me the hook over here. So let me just offer some concluding remarks. I think based upon these answers, one assumption that we can take away from this is that mental illness is a really big deal in this community, especially in the criminal justice system. These are the cards that we have that I'm not going to be able to get to. And I think that speaks to a keen interest in this topic and the need for more community discussions, just like we're having here. Honest discussions, frank discussions with community leaders, so that we know where we're at, where we've been, and where we're going. I do think, though, as a Sarasota citizen, that we have reason to be very proud of the leadership that we have in this community. These three gentlemen are great examples of that. Certainly we have more to do, but hey, we live in an aspirational community. Anything other than the best is just not good enough. And thank goodness we have leaders like Sheriff Hoffman, State Attorney Ed Brodsky, and Greg Francis at the Correctional Department with the state to guide us in these very difficult issues. Thank you all. Barbara?
Yes, sir, thank you. Actually, Wendy, I'm going to use your help in just a moment.
Good?
Yes,
All right.
don't go anywhere. Stay right there. We would like to say thank you so very much to everyone who was courageous enough to sit up here on this panel today with a lot of people who could potentially be critical of what you're doing. However, we're very grateful for all that you are doing and encourage you to think big, as John said, innovative practices, great training for all of your staffs. We really appreciate it. Thank you. We're counting on you. Thank you. And to show our appreciation, we have these little plaques to give you. Greg?
Thank you.
Sheriff Hoffman?
Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you. Ed?
Thank you.
And I still want to know what journals you read.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yes. Every issue of American Psychology, no, I'm just kidding.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much. We appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Now you can eat your dessert. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everyone's questions, but obviously we had a limited amount of time. And John, thank you so much for leading and moderating. Really appreciate it. All right, and now we are going to hear from one of our residents, whose name is Brian Richards, who unfortunately is no relation to me, but I would be honored if we were related. And we are probably someplace way back. Again, he's a current resident of Project 180's residential program. He'll share a bit about his life journey and the changes he's making while he's at Project 180, and will be followed by Board Member Bob Collins, who's going to explain how you can become involved with Project 180.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming here today. So a little nervous about getting up here and telling you my faults about how I'm a drug addict and I've been incarcerated, been in prison, but it's very easy for me to say how grateful I am for the men and women here who have paved the road for me to have this opportunity. And I mean that with my heart, you know. Let's see, you know, I got into drugs at a young age. I had consequences right from the beginning. I'm 48 now, and I've spent probably 7 or so years of my life incarcerated. Been to prison, been to jail after prison. I struggle with the disease of addiction. And, you know, for that, you know, it's a humbling experience. You know, it's been difficult. So my journey started about 14 months ago, and when I was put into the Sarasota County Jail. I wanted a different life. I wanted a different outcome, you know, and I was finally ready for it to happen. You know, like I said, I've been incarcerated numerous times, and such a nice guy, but I was always find myself incarcerated. I couldn't understand why, you know, but, you know, I don't understand. But, you know, and I also want to say, you know, I was guilty for what I went to prison for, and I was guilty for the things I went to jail for. I was held accountable. You know, but what happens afterwards? You know, after somebody wants to make the decision to change their life, and I can only thank everybody who has paved that path for me to be able to do that. You know, I started off in the Sarasota County Jail, incarcerated many times, like I said, and I had finally had enough. And you know, I got into recovery pod after being in jail for about 5 months or so, and what a blessing that turned out to be. You know, thank you for everybody who volunteers there. You know, Zach, obviously. It's been great, you know. So after that transition was going to happen, so they're going to let me out eventually, and you know, I wasn't quite sure what was next. You know, yeah, I have all these intentions on being a productive member of society, a taxpayer, a good father, good neighbor. But if there's no direction for me, this is for me, it was bound to fail, you know. And I found out about Barbara's agency, Project 180, and immediately I knew that was going to be the road that I needed to take, you know. And I called them up, collect, you know, and they accepted my call. And you know, Mike Southwick, thank you. He came in and interviewed me, you know, in person, and I told him about my plight of this drug addiction and this constant in and out of jail and incarceration, and you know, I just wanted to not be a bad guy anymore. You know, I wanted to stop this addiction and do the right thing, you know, but I didn't know how, and so it's been a gradual process. You know, I vowed when I was in jail at the very beginning I was going to be a better person, you know, than what I was, you know, and I've succeeded that, you know, I've definitely succeeded that, and yeah, thank you very much, you know. You know, thank you. It's not over yet. This is a lifelong struggle, you know, and you know, definitely on the right track. And you know, the newer guys that come into the house, I try to help out as much as I can. You know, different pitfalls and that we have. You know, stuff being a convicted felon sometimes. You know, the stigma's out there. You know, thank God everybody here tonight. I mean, I really appreciate it. You know, give a hand to you guys. I mean, I appreciate you guys' help, and you know, everything is. when we're ready to make that change, we need that hand, you know, and it's definitely not a handout, you know, it's a lot of responsibilities in Project 180. It's not just come, you know, sit down and take it easy and relax. No, there's a lot of, you know, there's 90 and 90. We have to, a 12-step program, you know, first thing off the bat, you know, there's program fees, you know, have to pay our own ways, you know, but the benefits, I mean, I could call anytime, 24 hours a day. I can always come and get help, you know, and it's wonderful. And with that, I think I've said enough, but I really, like I said, I really appreciate you guys supporting this cause. It's really helped, and to our all continued success. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today. My name is Bob Collins, and I am a Board of Directors member, and I'm here to tell you how you can become involved with Project 180. But first, Brian, thank you for sharing your personal journey and how Project 180 has helped you move forward. You're a great model, and we're lucky to have you in the program. Before I get started, I want to tell you that I'm a product too, not of Project 180, but of the Sarasota County Recovery Pod. I'm an alumni. Thank you. I want to tell you that the efforts of the panel have changed my life for the rest of my life. And now I'm blessed to be able to go back in and mentor young men and help them walk the same path that I've been blessed to walk. Now, as I've found, it takes more effort not to become involved with Project 180 than it does to actually be a part of this great organization. I want to invite you to get involved in the life-saving and transformative work that Brian has described. It will not only change the lives of our residents and clients, it will change your life too. In our audience, we have some alumni of Project 180. Would you guys stand? The alumni of Project 180? I know there's some of them. Clients of 180, if you're in 180, would you stand? These and many others are the lives we're trying to change, guys we're trying to help. At your place, you'll see a response card. It looks like this. We have some fairly urgent needs today. Our greatest need is to purchase a third house. There are many, many, many men trying to get into Project 180. And unfortunately, we only have 2 homes with a total of 11 beds. The demand is extremely high to get in. We have to turn people away because we don't have enough space. We're the only program of our kind in Sarasota. We're not a halfway house or a transitional home. We're a residential program, and we teach people how to live. We want to help more people. We want to help more people get back on their feet because the odds of success increase exponentially when they are living in one of our houses, surrounded by peers who also want to do the right thing and are receiving Project 180's in-depth, comprehensive help. If you can help us purchase a house by providing funding, connecting us with funders, helping to identify a suitable house, or by discussing ideas, please note this on your response card or give Barbara a call. The more people we can help, the stronger, more stable, and more successful our community and local families will be. You heard what the panel is doing. This is our opportunity to be a part of that. You've heard it said, it takes a village. This is part of the village of Sarasota. And we're inviting everyone to get involved. We understand not everyone can afford to buy us a house. How about a bike? It takes our residents a while to purchase a car. And in the meantime, they ride bikes. We need bikes, bike locks, and backpacks. We need Walmart gift cards. We need gift cards to purchase necessities for our first week out clients. Most enter the program with literally nothing. You could donate Walmart gift cards. Do you know how to open a bank account? Make a budget? Are you a business owner who could go inside with us and explain how to get and keep a position in your industry? The incarcerated population is a hidden workforce that we haven't tapped into yet. I read that somewhere. True story. With more CEO workforce education and financial literacy instructors, we can serve more inmates. Would you like to be on a Project 180 committee? We have openings in our finance and our fund development committees, as well as our housing task force. Use your response card to tell us how you'd like to help out. Make a donation. The blue envelopes at your seat are for financial donations. The orange and pink envelopes are for if you want to take a centerpiece home with you. We ask you for a generous donation. If you're donating by credit card, please include all the information or we won't be able to process it. I promise you it is not only fun, but inspiring to be involved with Project 180. You get to see lives change before your very eyes. Their progress is swift and the duration is long. Think about the guy who comes up to you and tells you thank you for helping to change his life. I owe a lot of people, and when I get the opportunity, I always walk up to them and tell them thank you, that their efforts weren't in vain, that their efforts helped change my life. You can share in that feeling as well. But it takes your help, and you may be just the person that we need. We need lots of help. So take out your response card, please. This card. Pick up a pen. I actually had another one. Wait. This is the one that's on your table. That was the easy one to grab. Take out your response card, pick up a pen, and start writing on it. Write down your contact information and tell us ways that you can help. Let us know you're interested in joining this family. And it is a family. We are a family. Don't hold back. Tell us how you can get involved. Tell us how we can get you involved. If you want Barbara or one of our board members to give you a call to discuss options, write it down and we'll do it. We need you. Making a significant change in our community requires you and people like you. Each and every person in this room. We have a great turnout this afternoon, and I want to thank everybody for coming. While you're reaching for your checkbooks, credit cards, and cash, I'll say thank you in advance for your generosity, and I'll let Barbara close out the season. Our board members will come to your table, or you can hand the envelope to a board member when you leave. Thank you so much for supporting Project 180's good work.
I'm so happy to see so many people writing. That's great. So while everyone is filling out their response cards, I'd like to ask everyone if you could please pull out your phone. Please pull out your phone and go into your email inbox, and you'll see an email from us. And in that email, it has a link. And if you click on that link, it's going to everybody, residents, everybody. Let's see those phones come out. And just take a minute and fill out it's a link to a survey. And many of our funders require or prefer that we have survey responses so that we can report on the metrics of our luncheon. So we'd really appreciate it if you could do that. And you can also take a photo of somebody else who's filling out their response card and post it on Facebook. For those of you whose email addresses we don't have, there is a paper survey at your table for you. It just takes a couple of minutes. Thank you. And I'd like to thank everyone for their generosity in helping our good work continue into the future. And to John Thaxton as our moderator. Sheriff Hoffman for his good work and the wonderful recovery pod. And the plans he has for the future. Ed Brodsky, our state attorney, who keeps our streets safe. And for Greg Francis. Thank you, Greg, for coming over and for filling in for Maggie. We really appreciate that. I would also like to thank Brian Richards. Thank you for your wonderful testament. Evelyn England of Sage Photography took photos today. Our wonderful board and staff, and our former staff member, Emily Rickerson, who's here. Everybody remembers Emily. And to Beneva Flowers and Plantscapes for your great generosity. We are so grateful to you all. So please, if our board members would stand up and be there for people to give you their envelopes, we'd sure appreciate it. Perhaps you can stand maybe down this way. And we would like to ask you to please stay tuned for next year's topic and the dates. And thank you for joining us, and have a lovely afternoon.